Okay, everybody, welcome back. Still waiting for a few folk to return. What we'd like to do now is to share the various learning points and the issues that came up as part of the discussion in your breakout groups, and to share that with the whole constituency, and from that try and to look at the different experiences along this transformation journey that those aspects, the 4 Ps, kind of bring into play. We'll just wait for folk to get settled, but the first group that are reporting back are going to be the prevention group, so we'll ask them to come up to the stage and give us their insights.
Hi everyone. So we were discussing prevention. Myself and my learner colleagues are here. They're going to keep me right. I'm just going to hopefully read my notes. So with regards to prevention, one of the key things that came out was keeping it simple, keeping it clear. So I'm going to try and do that with the feedback. We wanted to discuss keeping service delivery nimble, relevant, responsive, and affordable. And obviously this led into discussions about solutions and a debate about technology. I think if I go straight to how we kind of tackled our outcomes for this, or our suggestions for the group, we wanted to make a division between technology and its place and the kind of broader sense of identifying the need. What information do we need to have? What do our customers need from us? What data do we have? How good is it? Technology is very important in all that. But I guess we put it in the priority that it's secondary. It's about enabling. So we wanted to think about planning for the long term, but appreciating the speed of technological development. So let's think about what our customers and what our services are going to be evolving into. And maybe that's a 5-year plan, maybe that's a longer than 5-year plan, but always remember that technology is moving lightning quick. And that actually led to a clear definition between decoupling systems and the data itself. It was an experience of the group that often we go into large-scale solution projects with technology. We integrate the information into those. How do we get it back out again when it comes to refreshing those systems or changing tack? So can we plan to have the data as a distinct thing from the actual solution itself? Plan with clarity of purpose. That seems to make sense. It's obviously harder than that. We all talked about the kind of customer needs, our internal customers, our external customers, but it is about trying to get to a real clarity of purpose and being able to always be kind of true to those key objectives. Plan to collaborate, and that's what's going to support that. Talk amongst ourselves, learn from each other, and that's an internal thing, obviously, amongst the different departments, different teams. But it's an external thing too. There was a great deal of local authority support in our group. They all were coming out and discussing, similar issues. So how do the local authorities work collaboratively? So perhaps some of these solutions and some of these ideas can be shared across them. Simplify, as I mentioned before, keep it simple, stupid. Decouple, and don't overcomplicate these tasks. We're not rocket scientists. I think one of the group mentioned that when it comes down to it, when they boil it down, the data is pretty similar all the time. It's contact details, name, address, phone number, a little bit of something about that person. That's generally the kind of data we're talking about. Yes, there are layers of complexity on top of that, but if we start with the fundamentals, that should help us to work out integrated and workable solutions. Is there anything anyone else would like to add to that?
No.
Great, thank you very much.
We were looking at putting responsibilities out into the community. We didn't really have any light bulb moments in terms of people bringing ideas that aren't yet happening, but there was some really interesting chat about initiatives that are happening. A great deal of stuff happening out of Glasgow that I think was new to a lot of people in the group. So basically we have a landscape where there's many projects and initiatives happening, and there seem to be there are these partnerships and collaborations developing both for delivery of services, and also for discussing the actual change around that. We felt that evidently effective information is central to this, and it went back to Alison's thing of data integrity, spoken about earlier. There was a good deal of talk around some innovative softwares and platforms that are around that can help with this. One to do with, and forgive me because this is something new to me, but a platform called ePIMS, which helps map property portfolios and what is where and where the relevance for particular properties are and the such like. We felt therefore that it was really important to have, there needed to be a framework, effective framework for information sharing, perhaps on a national basis. There was some talk around big data and open data, so some big open data, and how there are problems still remain with lots of separate systems in there. We did speak about whether, the challenge between everybody doing their own thing and working nationally, and the importance of setting some national agenda around this and getting some national coordination to make this whole thing work better. So whilst we didn't necessarily come up with anything new around the theme, I think there was both some frustration in the group that we've been having this conversation for an awful long time, but also I think everybody in the group heard of some new stuff that's kind of moving the wheels forward. So in terms of the overall conversation of the day, I think it contributes to where we're going. Yeah, we had no light bulb moments, I'm afraid. So.
Okay, we've heard from the prevention and the place. Could the folk from performance come up and give us the summary of that? Yeah, thank you, Alice.
Just set the scene. So we're a gaggle, actually. We're all talking. We're sort of democracy here. Ren, do you want to start off by what we were?
Yeah, I mean, we had an opening theme, which actually we challenged, which was how do we transform public sector customer service into the same experience as the private sector? But certainly with my own experience with TalkTalk over the weekend, I'm not sure I want to see that kind of transformation. And a lot of what's done in public sector customer services is very good. So our learning points evolved in a different way, which is about how we leverage some of the stuff we've got to better understand transformation and led on from the things that Bernadette and Alison were saying this morning and started really to talk a little bit about big data and the more hidden dark data within it.
And we moved on to the idea of storytelling, and our friend here, John, who will introduce himself in a minute, will tell you a story which sort of sets the scene for some of the other things we talked about.
Good morning. John Allen from Clackmannanshire Council. Our session actually started off with targeting. I think that was our initial comment this morning. What came out of the group was actually, we know, which is really good, we know when things are actually a little bit wrong, but we know we've got ideas about how to make them right. And one of the examples we discussed this morning in terms of how data can be used to effect a change, we pointed to the example of Giuliani and actually what happened in 2000 over in New York. So if you think yourself back to the days of when you'd be actually sat at home on a Friday night watching Cagney Lacey, having your cup of coffee on a night, and you'd be actually watching all these cop shows of what was actually happening in New York, and you can remember all the drugs busts and the crime on the streets and how Times Square wasn't safe. Well, way back in late 1990s, 2000s, they came around with this GIS technology and actually started to plot while the crimes were occurring, and they used the information to work out where the police beats were going to be going the following week. And if you think back, you'll be aware that Times Square has actually changed over the past 15 years or so. So if anyone's been to New York, they'll say, this is a really safe place to now visit. Perhaps one of the things that they didn't actually recognize at the time was that they're going to make this change. They want to make New York a safe place, and they want to encourage tax dollars to be actually brought in from people visiting the state, and it's quite easy to go and actually tax all these tourists. Well, what's actually happened is that all of the people who operated in these small businesses, perhaps like the small bars and things, perhaps where the crime was, the zero tolerance approach, they've closed all these down now. So if you go across to New York now and you go down to Times Square, any time of the day you'll find about 150 police officers around Times Square itself. You go down to the financial area down on Wall Street, down in Battery Park there, it's not safe after 7 o'clock at night because there's no one about. If you go down to any of the clubs down there to actually listen to the music, you'll find there's the odd murder or two. You will not be aware of that. And you'll find that all the people who used to actually congregate around Manhattan have now been displaced and moved over into Brooklyn. So when we actually think about data and how we're using it, we then start to think about the risk. So whilst you might have a strategic objective to reduce crime, you might have some ideas about how you might go about implementing it. We have to keep an eye on actually using the data and maybe actually considering stories we've actually learned from elsewhere about some of the unfortunate consequences you may get. So right now, New York's got a problem that Manhattan is not safe after 7 o'clock at night. How do they actually address that? Do they bring everyone back into Manhattan again?
Thank you, John. It's really, really good. And so we found that, well, not amusing because it's actually quite serious, but it was a risk. That was a kind of a negative. But that's also a communication thing as well. And so we moved on to one of our colleagues in the room as an accountant. Sorry, I didn't get your name, but he told us about the thing that Bernadette was talking about this morning, about the gathering of data through for the benchmarking group. And forgive me, I don't know much about it, and I paraphrase his comments. But it's not just about the money in that respect, it's also about the data behind it. So it's more difficult to collect the information, the demographics, etc., behind that data. But that data behind the money data is really useful. But you guys, maybe at the coalface, don't know that much about benchmarking, and really the responsibility on the higher up echelons to actually explain some of the things they're doing, which you could help them deliver, isn't there. So this disconnect is a learning point. So that was basically the last one we talk about. Ren, have you got anything to add, Robert?
I think it was quite clear from our group that as Alison mentioned, there is that disconnect between the higher level strategic planning and the lower level sort of operational level, and the need to connect those together with better communication, and that's come across the other groups as well. And that's brilliant.
And I think that there was a good example of that there's an awful lot of data there. There's a lot of data in silos. We all know we've got to overcome those silos. Even if we do, we've got further problems because not all that data will talk to each other. So it needs a big national conversation, a big national project. Not only, I think, to understand what data we've got, for what purpose, but also to reuse all the outcomes and share the outcomes for the completed data analytics projects. As well, but to communicate throughout the council or any organisation why things are being done. And the example was, if you're asking the person in the groundskeeping staff in their truck in the park or the bin man in the dust cart to collect some data, further data, fill in a form, you've got to communicate why it's important and why the outcome to the citizen or to the local business is so important. So, and I think everyone in this room, and it echoed the room we were in, gets what's got to be done, and it's just trying to think out of the box a bit more about how to really get into some of that data, but also to share the outcomes, especially the beneficial ones as they're learned.
So just want to say thank you to a very engaged room that we had. Most of the people were really interested and got talking. So thank you, team, wherever you are in this room. Thank you.
Thank you for the performance team providing a performance as well. We come to the last group now, which was looking at the people dimension to all of this. Thank you. No, they're not joining us.
Hello, I'm Diana Watt from Edinburgh Napier University. So our brief was to have a look at the people aspect of change management. And I think we kind of went a little bit off-piste because in our group we had a few people who are currently implementing EDRMSs in local government. And I think we all know from experience that it's very difficult. So we kind of started to look at that, and I'm afraid we lost the unlocking the full creativity, because within our group there were a lot of people involved in change management, but it was, I think we'd all come to sort of find out what the solution was. So we actually ended up looking at the process and the challenges of change management from a people perspective. So the approaches that we've ended up with are basically, I think, the first one, and I'm sure I'm speaking to the converted when I say that it's getting buy-in from the users. If you haven't got that buy-in from the users and something is being pushed onto them, it's, you know, they're basically being inflicted with some kind of change. It's very difficult, and sometimes they will find a way around it. So if you force people to use a system and they don't understand it, they haven't had any buy-in, you sometimes find that they're actually going around, they're finding ways to work around the system that's being brought in. I think we concentrated on electronic systems, but actually, you know, you think about all of the systems, there's so many different systems that are introduced, management, IT, just, you know, there's a wide variety. So actually our first issue was we need to get buy-in from users. So how do we do that? Involving them at the beginning. So getting them in, discussing what are the issues, how do we look at this from a customer's point of view, what's the customer's issues, what are our issues, what is the end result, where do we want to get to, what's the nirvana of information, I don't know, wonderment that we're all going to be able to find exactly what we need when we need it. So getting them in and actually allowing them to have some investment in the process. So what are the benefits going to be for them? So if you're having that discussion, and I think that's what it boiled down to with us, was it is a discussion. It's the leadership buy-in. You need strong leadership support, and within our group that was something also that was clearly lacking. We had a few people put their hand up to say, yes, we've got great management support, but I think a lot of us know that it's a box-ticking exercise. Yes, management have said, you can go ahead, yep, and you just deal with it, and we know it's going on, but it's actually how do you engage that leadership support so that the communication is coming from them and you've got feedback, you've got two-way feedback from the top to the bottom, and you're getting everybody involved. So to us, that is the challenge. And I can't say we came up with any creative solutions, but it's about a round table, getting people involved. We did have some really good suggestions, one of which was about having local change solutions, so a network of people that are involved. So people who are local, the teams can ask them questions, they can air their issues, and somebody who's local that can be asked, so what's going on, so have you dealt with this issue, but people that are there, people that you can talk to. You can't, dash off to the chief exec every 5 minutes saying, well, what's happening and how are you addressing my problem? So that local change network is a very good idea. Also, that network part of the reason for having those representatives is to have them influencing. So people in the teams are bringing their issues forward, and it's being carried up to the top leadership. Sorry, Jane, do you want to step in? Okay, yeah, all right, I'll crack on. I'll get through it a bit faster, sorry. So communication also, again, needs to come from the top. There needs to be a clear message. This is what we're trying to do. Raising awareness of responsibilities, and that is everyone's responsibilities. So as part of the communication, speaking to the end users and saying, actually, this is not just management's responsibility, it's also yours. Empowering people and also having a transparent just transparent process completely. So if the reason is that people are going to lose jobs, so how are they going to be redeployed? What support is the business putting in there? But also, whoever is dealing with the project, sorry, I'm at the last point now, is getting them to realize that it's a spend to save. They need to invest upfront in their users so that we don't have these kind of technological changes. You know, the system's just been brought in and it's redundant and there's a new system needed because the old system never worked. So it's actually influencing managers to understand that. So I'm sorry, can't give you any wonderful creative ideas to go back and take to your people, but yes, we just went over a lot of the issues and same messages. We need leadership and we need actually our users to be involved and we need their voices to be heard. So thank you very much. Sorry to go on for so long.